crafters, and welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from Designs by Dee, and today I have this gorgeous card of florals to share with you. I want to show you how to level up your card making by doing some simple ink blending, and it's really simpler than you thought. So I hope that the tips and tricks I tell you today will help you create some beautiful bouquets of your own. So these are the products that I'm going to be using today. I'm showing you my Altenew ink blending brushes, and I'm showing you these because I want you to see the area and how small the brushes are. So if you have more detail brushes or brushes that are really good at delivering a lot of ink but aren't too large, go ahead and use those. I will be using Altenew inks, but I will give you an ink equivalent list within the description below if you have more Pink Fresh Studio inks, which used to be the inks that were carried more on hand by Crafty Meraki. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got a white piece of cardstock. It's just the normal page size, 8.5 by 11. I've cut that in half to do my die cutting. So I'm using the Crafty Meraki Artisan Flora Paradise. These are the lily. I found that the lily has like a lot of open space, which is perfect for this ink blending technique. You want a larger flower. If you don't have the lily, maybe find a flower that's large like this. Now there are 4 dies here, and keep in mind each die has a bunch of cutouts on it that correspond to one piece, so one flower, one bud, etc. Now there's the largest flower, which I'm cutting out twice, the long leaves, which I'm cutting out twice, and then the other 2 I'm going to cut out once each. And I think actually the smaller die there that creates like the smallest flower, I did end up cutting that out twice as well. So everything 3 times except for the buds, the ones that are the smaller buds with the little flower. So I've gone ahead and cut all of those out of just plain white cardstock because remember, we're doing ink blending. And then what I like to do is to put these in, if you have little bowls, those really come in handy once you've done a whole bunch of die cutting, especially with these dies where you have like the different dies grouped together. This way I can put all of the ones that are grouped together in one section of this bowl or in one of those other smaller bowls as well. So that's what tends to work for me, and I hope that little tip kind of helps you organize your die cuts because I do a lot of die cutting and those bowls really come in handy. So now I've got my sticky mat, and I find that this also comes in handy when doing ink blending, especially with die cuts. So I'm grabbing the flower and I'm kind of looking at the layering guide to just see how it's going to come together. So I kind of know like what colors to put where. So I like having that layering guide just beside me so I can kind of reference it so I can see, okay, I kind of have to put more of this color on this side versus that side and so on. Okay, so the way that we're going to do this here is we're going to have each flower creating a whole bouquet, and those flowers are going to kind of mix from one color to the next. So the tip in order to do this and to make your bouquet cohesive is to have one color that you use in each flower. So from flower 1 to flower 2, I have one color that's going to overlap those 2 flowers. And then from flower 2 to flower 3, I'm going to have another color that's going to overlap those 2 flowers, which kind of creates like that kind of array of colors that kind of goes from a rainbow from one side to the next. So I'm starting off with the first large flower. So there's only 4 pieces for this layered flower. I'm using the colors ultraviolet, purple wine, and midnight violet for now, and then I think I add razzleberry. So I'm putting the colors that I'm using up in the top left hand of the screen. And again, if you use Pink Fresh inks, I have a color equivalent. It's all written down below in the description if you want to find colors to use from that brand. And if you're looking through that description and you're looking at that color equivalency I'm giving you, keep in mind that I'm labeling each flower 1, 2, and 3. So the first flower, which is this one, is going to be flower 1. Flower 2 is going to be the flower in the middle, which is again the same flower as this, just different colors. And then the last 2 flowers, which are the smallest, are going to be flower 3 and 4, which are the same colors. So I've gone ahead and I've started with like the darkest purple in the center towards the left hand side of the petals and the main portion of the flower. And I'm going with the pinkier colors, so more of the razzleberry and the purple wine to the right hand side of the flower petals to kind of create that change from the darker to lighter tone, or from the purple to pinky tone. Now, don't get too hung up on like, okay, I've got to keep the purples on the left and the pinks on the right. Just go with it, okay? Because the inks, they're gonna blend together and they're gonna come together nicely. Now you can see I have razzleberry on the screen there. The razzleberry is the nice bright pink that I'm putting on more to the right top edge. Now you can see here when I take these off and I layer them, I'm looking at them. Now, nothing is hard and fast. Say you layer these together and you're like, just something doesn't look right. Maybe I need to add more pink or more purple. You can always take those apart, put them back on your sticky mat, and add more of a different color. And that is the beauty of ink blending. And this is the biggest tip I want all of you out there who are afraid of ink blending, aren't confident in your ink blending skills to remember, is that ink blending is about building. So even if you like start off with a couple colors and you're not getting the look you want, as long as you add colors which are kind of in the same family or tone group, you can build up that color. Like I could add some blue to the bottom here if I wanted to give it more of a bluish tinge. I could add more of like an orangey tone or a reddish tone to the pink to darken that up if I wanted to do that. So those types of things, keep it in mind, and you can always build up your color and fix what you've got. And sometimes I think like the more colors you add, now keep in mind not to add those opposite opposing colors because you'll end up with muddy brown. Other than that, as long as you stay within those tone families, you can build up a really nice flower which is completely unique. So when I do my ink blending, I go with that flow and I go based on look. I use my eye and I use the colors that I've chosen, and then in the end I might add a little more. And you're going to see me do this with this flower. So this is I'm going to label it flower number 2. So if you're looking for the colors for this flower, you're looking for flower number 2 down below, and you can find those equivalents in Pink Fresh. Now, I started out with 3 colors. I started with orange cream, coral bliss, and the razzleberry. Remember, the razzleberry we're carrying over from the last flower, so that's that second tip. Make sure you use one of the colors, the lightest tone, the color that's going to blend into the next tone in your next flower, from the first flower to the second. So we're using orange cream, coral bliss, razzleberry here. I'm starting with the orange bliss. This is going to be more towards the left bottom. Then I'm coming in with coral bliss, which is more of the corally reddish tone. Then I'm adding the razzleberry, which is the pinky tone. And then at the end here, I'm like, it's just a little too pink. I wanted it to have more of that corally reddish color. So then I brought in crimson, which is like a nice red, and I'm going to add that crimson to the pink, which is what I said before you could always do as long as you're keeping within that same tone family. So I'm building this up a little more, and I'm adding, actually, did I add it to the pink or to the red? I mean, to the orange. I think I actually went ahead and I added that crimson to the orange part there because I really wanted these colors to be a bit darker. Now keep in mind, if you're using these inks, I think Pink Fresh works in the same way. When you add your ink initially, you get really deep, vibrant colors, and as the ink dries, it evens out. So if you're worried about your ink blending at first, just let it dry. And on top of that, it lightens a little. So keep that in mind when you're picking your colors. If you really want deeper colors, go for the darker tones so that it ends up being just like a little bit lighter than that. Now I'm done with that one, so I did add that crimson on there to darken up one of the edges. And then again, I layered that flower together and decided, okay, I'm happy with this. And then I moved on to the next 2 flowers. So these are flowers number 3 and 4. Again, I'm labeling number 3 and 4 if you're looking for the equivalent colors down below in the description. These, I'm going to use yellows and reds. So I've got some maple yellow here, which is the main color. So I'm coloring this, I'm adding the ink mainly to the left and the middle of the flower. Then I'm grabbing some yellow ochre. So the yellow ochre is like a deeper yellow, like it gives it a bit of a browny tone. That's the darker color that's coming in on the left bottom as well. Then I'm going to come in, I had some rouge out there. I don't know that I fully used it. I think I just needed more of that crimson. So crimson sounds familiar. This was the red that I used on flower number 2, which I'm bringing into flower number 3 and 4 to create that array of colors. So as you can see here, I added the crimson to like the top edge there on the right, and then I added a little bit of the rouge to blend that deeper red into the yellow. So I did end up using all 4 of those colors. So now we have to do the leaves and then the little anthers and stamen that kind of go in the middle of the flower. So I've cut out, so there's two pieces to the middle of the flower for the open flowers. So there's four pieces there. One I'm going to do mainly yellow and then the other one green, which kind of goes over top of that. And then we've got all of the buds and the leaves and the stems here. I don't end up using every single piece of this, but I like to kind of do them just to give me the option so that when I'm actually putting my card together, I don't have to go back and kind of ink blend some more pieces. It's always better to have more than less, and then you can always keep the extra pieces for another project if need be. And you'll notice for the yellows, I'm using the colors that I've already used. So I've grabbed some of the maple yellow to add my yellow to those anthers. And then for the bottom portion, which is, I think, the stigma, I don't know. I always get the biology messed up, even though I learned this in high school. But the green portion of it, I ended up doing that in olive color green. And then to give the leaves, I added the olive color green to the leaves as well. It's got a nice yellowish tone to it, which I thought brought in the yellow from the flowers that we ink blended earlier. So I thought that that went well. And then I also grabbed mountain pine, which is more of like a green, like a forest, deeper green. And I'm using that more for like my darker areas of my leaves in order to create a variation in tone and give it more of a realistic look. So when it comes to the leaves and stuff and the buds, I didn't do anything crazy. Just added that olive and add the mountain pine in the areas where you feel like there's going to be a shadow, it's going to be darker, like at the bottom of the leaf. I kind of added it to the bottom and the top of the leaf so that the centers have more of the shine and kind of glisten of the leaves. Once all that's done, I put that aside and now I'm working on my background. So I've got the Parisian mini slimline background. I've cut that out of some white cardstock and I'm kind of just looking at how this is going to fit everything. I'm going to do a little bit of splattering here. So before you put all your inks away, grab a few of them that you used on the flowers. So I think I've got the maple yellow, I've got some of the crimson, or sorry, the coral bliss, I think, and then the ultraviolet. So I'm just adding some of that ink to an acrylic block. I'm going to spray it with a spritz of water, use my paintbrush to pick up that watered down ink now, and I'm just going to splatter it over the background here. So that bottle has nothing fancy in it, it's just water. And all I'm doing is cleaning off my acrylic block. I'm sorry, my big arm gets in the way there now and then. But I'm just trying to grab my colors and just splatter this background with the colors that I used on the flowers. And I just find that this little bit of splatter, again, creates a cohesive card and ties in your background to your foreground. And then my last color, I like to start with the lightest color and go to darkest, just in case there's any leftover ink on my acrylic block. It doesn't really muddy up my color too much. And that's pretty much it for the background. So while the background is drying, you can go ahead and assemble your flowers. Now, I'm doing this strategically because I want my leaves, my petals, to kind of fold up a bit. I don't want my entire design to be flat. I want it to have a little bit of dimension. So I'm just using some liquid adhesive and I'm attaching these petals just in the center. So you'll notice I'm only adding glue to the very center of each of these layers and sticking it on there. Now before you add that last petal, you want to add the stamen here. So I'm just putting this together, adding the green portion onto the yellow. I'll attach this there in the middle and then attach the leaf, or sorry, the last petal. And again, just a little bit of glue in the center is all I need because I want to actually zhuzh this up a little. And I'm just going to fold the petals a little bit to create a little bit of lift and a little bit of dimension. It just makes the flowers, I find, kind of step off the page just a little bit. And I'll go ahead and do this for both of these flowers. So I'll go ahead and attach this in the exact same manner as I did the first one. Now you'll notice that the majority of that first layer kind of gets covered up. However, I did do the ink blending on that just in case, and just because look how I'm lifting the petals, you see the color underneath it, right? So you do actually need that ink blended as well. Maybe not as well as the other portions. So maybe if you want to practice your ink blending, you can practice on that layer first and then kind of make sure the next 3 layers are perfect and Yeah, I think that it's good to add the color to that layer as well. Now, another way I like to vary my flowers is you'll notice that I put the stamen, so the center of the flower, I kind of angled it a little more to the right than keeping it in the center like the other one. And that just kind of makes your flowers look unique and a little bit different, considering you're using the exact same flower cutout on your bouquet a second time. So I've just judged that one up as well. I'll put that to the side and we'll put together the two smaller flowers. So I have 6 pieces here. Now, you can't see it. I have my layering guide off to the side and I am using that as I put this together. So again, I'm just adding a little dab of glue near the bottom of these petals. And I put one together. I find that these reverse grip pliers, they really come in handy. Sorry, tweezers, not pliers. These reverse grip tweezers really come in handy when putting these die cuts together. You could also use the Bling Buddy that Crafty Meraki has. That also works as well. I find for the smaller pieces though, I like to grasp them with the tweezers and then attach them. And yeah, so those two flowers are done. Again, I will zhuzh up the ends of those as well. Now I can put together these pieces with the buds. So like for instance, the bud here, rather than using the tweezers here, which didn't actually, it was a little finicky, you could actually just add the glue to the bottom layer and then use the Bling Buddy to just kind of pick up your piece or your die cut and attach it. Although I got to admit, it really just depends on my mood. Sometimes I'll grab my tweezers, sometimes I'll grab the Bling Buddy. It just really depends. And it also depends what I have in front of me, what's closest to my hand. Okay, so all of those pieces are done. Now I do have the stem for this flower, but I don't know if I'll use it. So let's just go ahead and do our sentiment. Now originally I was gonna use those larger those Meraki Moments sentiments. However, I thought that it would cover up too much of my card and those beautiful flowers. So I opted for the You Inspire Me stamp set, and I grabbed one of the kind of, I like to call them banner sentiments because they work perfectly on a banner, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Now, again, I like to have options, so this is basically how I craft. I thought I'd kind of show this here. I don't know if you craft the same, but I like to have different versions of my sentiments, so when I'm putting my card together, I can kind of look what it looks like with one color or the other color and then decide which one works best. So in this case, I've got some black cardstock, and actually took me a minute to grab it there. So I'm just adding my anti-static powder tool. I'm using some Versamark ink and I am just stamping out the sentiment, and I'm going to heat emboss it with just some plain white embossing powder on the black cardstock. So sometimes the black cardstock, especially for die cut backgrounds, which are like the majority of it is white and then you have a lot of color, the black and the white look really good. So I like to keep this as an option to possibly use. I finished heating that up. I will cut that out into a banner afterwards, but before I do that, I am going to just stamp out the sentiment with some black VersaFine Clair ink, and I will just stamp that there. And I'll take both of these versions, cut them out into banners, and then when I put it together with my card, I can kind of see which works best. Now we do have to make a specialty card base, so all I do is I grab my white cardstock and I kind of line it up with the cover, or the cover die here, and I score like a little bit, like maybe like a quarter, no, not a quarter, or 1/8 of an inch over to create just a tiny bit of a border. Then I fold it over, cut that out, I cut off the overhanging bit, I'll line up that cover die or die cut again, and then I'll just cut it again with a little bit of a border there. So I get like a tiny border around that. I didn't actually have to measure anything, and I'm all for not measuring things. I don't know if I've mentioned it on this channel. I'm from Canada. We use the metric system. A majority of you are from America, and you guys use the imperial system, which is all inches, feet, and it always confuses me, and I hate converting. So I, as much as I can, try not to use numbers. So that was my easy way of making my card base without having to measure a thing. And now I'm grabbing my foam. So I've got fun foam here. I've cut it to just a little bit smaller than my cover, or that the front panel. And you can see again, I didn't measure anything. I just kind of lined it up with that front panel and then cut it just a little smidge smaller. You can see here I've got a little bit overhanging. You can just trim that off. Doesn't have to be exact, as long as it's not going to be seen from the front, and it will hold up your front panel. So now I'll just add some adhesive and attach this with that tiny little border going all around the card. And now we can put this together. So as you put these florals and kind of circle them around the center here to create your bouquet, you're gonna see how those colors come together nicely. And that tip I gave you, whereby you take one color which transfers from flower 1 to flower 2, and then the color from flower 2 to flower 3 and 4, you see how that works here and how everything just cohesively goes together. And you could use this for any color scheme. You could go from blue to green to yellow, or whatever you like. As long as you're transferring one color from one of the flowers to the next, those two flowers are going to go together nicely. So I'm putting this together. I haven't actually glued anything down, and I'm looking at those sentiment strips, and I tried the white and the black. The black on white and then the white on black, and I decided I like the black strip better. So I think I'm going to use that. But before I kind of attach everything, I'm going to grab my foam squares and start sticking on these florals. So I know some people like to kind of put down and create their bouquet and then use not cling wrap, what's it called, press and seal, to kind of stick all your bouquet together and then add your glue to the back and attach it. You could do that if you wanted. If that works best for you. For me, I like to use foam adhesive and just use one piece to tack down the largest flowers, and then I'll stick in the leaves and the buds behind it with liquid adhesive, so that you get some of the flowers popping off your page a little more, and then you get like the leaves and stuff kind of more on the panel so that it's in the background. And I just like that variation and dimension to create that little bit of like your foreground and background and stuff like that. And once we put all of this together, so I'm just gluing all of those leaves and bits in the background, you're gonna see how much that zhizhing actually has a really cool effect on here. It's hard to see here because the card is just laying flat, but when I pick it up in the end, you're gonna see all of that dimension and how the petals just kind of like flop open a little bit, so it kind of looks like it's almost a real flower. Especially those two smaller flowers, they turned out so nicely. I really like how they look. So I've got everything down. Now I'm gonna add my sentiment strip. I did cut one edge of it. I gave it like a diagonal cut. I'm going to cut off the excess bit here. I attached it with 2 pieces of small foam adhesive. And I'm zhuzhing up these petals a little bit more to give it that excess dimension. So it looks like these are like real flowers just kind of coming off my page. I really like how that looks. And then to finish off this card, I'm going to add some bling here. This bling is called Meraki Sparkle Midnight Shimmer Illusion. I love all of these gems. Like, this is a really nice one. It's got more of a metallic opaque look, and it's kind of like a gold which shines like a purpley color, which I thought goes perfect with those 2 flowers that are purple and yellow. So I thought this would work nicely. So I've stuck some of those down there. I stick with an odd number because that's usually what's aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And look at all of that dimension. You can see as I turn that sideways how much dimension it really has. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video today and that you can pick up some of these tricks for doing some simple ink blending for your bouquets for your card making. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to check out the Crafty Meraki store. Everything used is linked in the description below. And also, if you're using Pink Fresh inks as opposed to Altenew inks, there is an equivalency in the description below, so you could do that. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.